I forfeited my whole life to assist an old homeless man. My folks deemed me foolish, then disowned me entirely. 24 months later, a single call compelled me to confront a truth I couldn't conceive. The elderly man I had rescued proved to be. Have you ever poured your entire life, every last ounce of your energy, into supporting your family, only to have them tell you that you're no longer their son, all because you showed a little kindness to a stranger? I'm Santiago Wright, and I'm here to tell you a story about how my life was flipped upside down, about shocking betrayals, and the unexpected discovery of what true family really means. My life, back then, felt like an endless, grinding loop. I was 30, living in Portland, Oregon, renting this tiny room in the suburbs. The walls were always damp, always moldy, and the constant hum of highway traffic was my lullaby. I was single, no real plans, just trying to survive, one day at a time. Because if I ever looked too far ahead, I honestly felt like I'd just crumble. Every morning, I'd stare at my reflection, force a smile, and promise myself, just today, Santiago. Tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow always came, and it was always the same. My entire existence revolved around 3 jobs, like 3 heavy chains tightening around my soul. During the day, I was a cashier at a convenience store called Quick-Mart. Imagine, drunk guys, stressed out moms with screaming kids, the stale smell of cigarettes clinging to everything. Thank you? I'd say, my voice automatic, but inside, I was just counting down the minutes, the exhaustion building. In the afternoons, I'd switch to delivering food for a nap, zipping through streets slick with Portland's perpetual rain on my e-bike, praying I wouldn't be late. Every delayed delivery meant a penalty, and a penalty meant my dinner would be a cheap sandwich instead of something halfway decent. Then, late at night, I'd put on a security guard uniform, sitting in a dark, abandoned warehouse, staring at monitors, fighting to keep my eyes open. Sleep? That was a luxury. 4 or 5 hours, max. I'd wake up with bloodshot eyes and a body that ached like I'd been in a brawl, but still, I'd plaster on that cheerful facade. This is just temporary, I'd tell myself. Things will get better. I'll get an office job, normal hours, and finally live instead of just survive. My meals were usually grilled cheese or hot dogs. No complaints though. I knew I was luckier than many. And every single month, I scraped together $2,000, every last penny, and sent it back home to my parents in Idaho. My parents were my world. I grew up on a poor farm, land dry, crops failing more often than not. My dad, Dylan Wright, was a stern, patriarchal man. Money, he'd say in his raspy, cigarette-worn voice, was the only thing you could rely on. My mom, Scarlett, was submissive, always in his shadow. She cooked, cleaned, rarely spoke up. I loved them, of course, the way a child is supposed to, but that love wasn't always returned. The money I sent was my duty, my way of paying them back. But in return? A quick birthday call, maybe a text when they needed more cash. I didn't blame them. It was just how my family was. Then came that day. Cold, rainy, the kind of Portland rain that soaks you to the bone. I was out delivering, my e-bike gliding over wet streets, a burger order in my bag. The timer on the app was ticking down, 10 minutes left. My heart was pounding, terrified of a penalty. Hurry, Santiago! I urged myself, pedaling harder. And then I saw him. An elderly homeless man, curled up on the sidewalk under a dripping tree. He was so thin, trembling like an autumn leaf, his skin pale, eyes blank. His clothes were soaked, torn. He looked utterly exhausted, on the verge of giving up. People hurried past him, a woman glued to her phone, a man with a suitcase, laughing teenagers. No one stopped. They just pretended not to see him. Or maybe they were just too caught up in their own lives. I rode past him, but his image, it just haunted me. A few meters ahead, I slammed on my brakes. You don't have time, Santiago, I argued with myself. You'll get penalized. This month's money for home is already tight. 8 minutes left on the timer. But then another voice, a deeper one, spoke in my head. A conscience, or maybe just memories of cold Idaho nights, my parents struggling. I couldn't just leave him. After a moment of agonizing hesitation, my hands shaking, I turned back. I ran to him, knelt on the wet sidewalk. Sir, are you okay? I asked, my voice thick with worry. He didn't answer, just trembled, blinking slowly. I touched his shoulder. He was ice cold, bone thin. He tried to speak, but the words were slurred, his mind lost somewhere. He couldn't stand. He was too weak. My heart seized. He could die right here if no one helped. Without another thought, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Hello, I need an ambulance. There's an elderly homeless man, very weak, at 5th and Oak in Portland. My voice shook, but I tried to stay calm. While I waited, I took off my only jacket, draped it over him. The rain soaked my back, but I didn't care. My delivery app buzzed. Order late. I knew I'd be fined, probably $50, but at that moment, it didn't matter. The ambulance arrived, sirens wailing. Paramedics checked him. Severe malnutrition, possible hypothermia, one said. They lifted him onto a stretcher, and I followed, riding my e-bike behind them. I called my boss, mumbled something about an emergency, and headed to the hospital, my worry for the old man overriding everything else. The hospital was chaos, beeping machines, disinfectant smell. The doctor's diagnosis: severe malnutrition, very poor health, early signs of Alzheimer's. He had no ID, no family information. The hospital would only provide basic care. I was listed as the temporary contact. I signed the papers, covered what they wouldn't, extra meds, clean clothes. My wallet emptied fast, but honestly it didn't cross my mind. If I didn't step up, who would? In the days that followed, between my shifts, I made time for him. Before Quickmart, I'd bring him hot soup. After deliveries, I'd rush to help the nurses wash him. Slowly, he became more alert, but when I asked his name, he just shook his head. He didn't remember anything. His memory was like a puzzle with most pieces missing. The doctor confirmed it: Alzheimer's. He can't care for himself, they said. We'll notify social services for placement. I nodded, but my heart was heavy. I knew those places, overcrowded, understaffed, where people were just warehoused. With his memory gone, he'd be lost, terrified. I walked into the hallway, sat on a cold plastic chair. Rain fell outside. Could I really just walk away? Or was this the moment my life would change forever? The old man, with his clouded eyes and frail body, had become a constant presence in my mind. Seeing him alone, lost in that hospital bed, it just ached. Social services would send him to some overcrowded nursing home, a place where he'd be lost in unfamiliar hallways, calling for memories that weren't there. I couldn't let that happen. But bringing him home? Me, a 30-year-old with 3 jobs, a tiny room, and the burden of sending money to Idaho? It felt insane. Or was it the only right thing to do? The thought hounded me. At Quickmart, my mind wandered, almost messing up change. Delivering food, the image of him on the sidewalk flashed in my mind. At night, staring at security monitors, I saw his face in the shadows. You can't take care of anyone, Santiago, I told myself. You can barely take care of yourself. But then, another voice emerged. Compassion, yes, but also maybe the loneliness I'd buried for years. My room was a tomb. Maybe, just maybe, bringing him home would bring a bit of warmth into my life. Or would it destroy everything? I lay awake, night after night, weighing it all. The money, the time, the responsibility. What if he got sicker? What if I couldn't handle it? But abandoning him? No. No way. After 4 agonizing days, I made my decision, my heart thumping like a drum. I returned to the hospital, found the doctor. I want to take him home, I said, my voice trembling. I'll take care of him. The doctor looked at me, doubt in his eyes. Are you sure? This is no joke. He needs constant care. I nodded, uncertainty swirling inside, and signed the papers. My hands shook, the ink smudged. This is your decision, I thought. No turning back now. A nurse led me to his room. He sat on the bed, staring blankly out the window. Sir, I'm taking you to my home, I said softly. He just nodded vaguely. My heart felt heavy, but also, a strange relief, as if an invisible weight had lifted. The day he was discharged was gray, with that relentless Portland drizzle. I left Quickmart early, muttering about a family emergency. My boss grumbled. Last time, Santiago. You're taking too many days off. I nodded, worried about the pay cut, but had no regrets. I arrived at the hospital by bus, snacks and clean clothes in a bag. The nurse helped him dress, and I wheeled him out. He was weak, leaning heavily on my arm. Careful, sir, I whispered. We took a taxi, a luxury I rarely afforded myself, and headed to my cramped room. Opening the door, the musty smell hit me. My heart raced. This is my home, sir, I said. It's not fancy, but it's warm. I quickly cleared a space, pushing furniture aside, laying an old mattress on the floor. You can sleep here for now. I'll buy a bed later, I promised, even though I had no idea how I'd afford it. He sat down, looking around with lost eyes, saying nothing. The first few days were hell. He was so weak, moving like a ghost, clinging to walls. Before work, I'd help him bathe, spoon-feed him chicken soup. My heart tightened every time he coughed. Between shifts, I worried constantly. Did he remember the bathroom? I'd call, hear him mumble something vague, and breathe a sigh of relief. Back home, exhausted, I'd still sit with him, rambling about my day so he wouldn't feel alone. After about 2 weeks, his health miraculously improved. He walked without trembling, his appetite returned. Simple meals, bread, eggs, cheap vegetables. He ate everything. His eyes grew brighter. Once he whispered, "Thank you?" I smiled, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through me. But his memory? Still gone. He didn't remember his name, his past. One evening, I gently asked who he was. He shook his head. "I don't know. I don't remember anything." My heart sank. He was like a book with erased pages, only the worn cover remaining. I tried to find information, calling homeless shelters, posting notices, even checking hospital records. Nothing. He might have been wandering for months, even years, a nurse told me. I searched online, but got no responses. Each disappointment left me restless. Did he have family? Were they looking for him? With no other options, I just let him stay. "You can stay here with me, sir," I said, and he nodded as if it were the most natural thing. My life changed in unexpected ways. The rented room, once silent and cold, now held another presence, a quiet warmth. Mornings I'd leave for Quickmart, telling him, "Take care of yourself. I'll be back soon." I'd leave worried, but over time, I realized he could handle things within his ability. He'd sweep the floor, wash dishes, even fold clothes, slow but careful movements, like habits from a past life. When I came home exhausted after the night shift, the room would often be tidier, the smell of food wafting from the tiny kitchen. He'd cook simple meals for us. We'd eat in silence, but it was no longer a lonely silence. His memory was still a patchwork. He'd confuse recent events, call me strange names. "Sir, my name is Santiago," I gently remind him, a pang of sorrow in my chest. But he was always kind, gentle. Even without knowing who he was, he knew how to care for others. One evening, I came home late, aching. He quietly made hot tea, placing it by my bed. "Drink this to feel better. You worked hard today." My heart warmed in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time, someone was waiting for me, caring without expecting anything in return. I grew accustomed to these routines, even took them for granted. I started looking forward to coming home, instead of dreading the emptiness. The house felt less empty. His light coughs, the clink of spoons, his quiet mumble, it all created a new rhythm. But deep down, I still worried. Money was tighter. What if my parents didn't understand? What if he remembered and left? Life felt like a taut wire, full of surprises. But for now, with him by my side, I no longer felt alone. He wasn't a burden. He was the warmth in this cold room. But harsh reality doesn't let you dream for long. Since bringing him home, my finances had plummeted. His medications, more nutritious food, even small things like soap, they drained my wallet. My income stayed the same. I counted every penny, skipped coffee, chose cheaper food. And worst of all, I was forced to cut back on the $2,000 I sent home. The first month, I sent it 3 days late, and only $1,500. My heart pounded as I hit transfer, knowing my parents would notice. And just as I feared, the phone rang that evening. It was Dad. His voice, sharp and harsh, no greeting. "Why is this month's money so little, Santiago? What the hell are you doing over there?" I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping the phone. In the living room, the old man was sleeping. "Work's been unstable lately, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Fewer delivery orders, pay cuts." "Unstable? My ass!" Dad snapped. "You've been there for years. Now it's unstable? Or are you hiding money for your own shit?" I was speechless. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "I'm still sending it, just not as much." He grunted, full of irritation. "Whenever we need it, it's always short. How are we supposed to live?" The call ended abruptly. I hadn't even had a chance to explain. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. "Mom." Her voice was weak, tired, but every word weighed on my chest. "Your dad and I are really struggling. Your brother still hasn't found a job. The electricity bill's about to be cut off." I closed my eyes, leaned against the wall. "I know, Mom," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'll figure something out." Mom spoke softly. "Try a little harder, okay? The whole family is counting on you." I said yes, obediently, my throat tightening. After hanging up, the room fell silent. The old man shifted in his sleep. I sat there for a long time, pulled in 2 directions. On one side, my blood family, waiting for money. On the other, a man who had no one but me. I didn't want to disappoint my parents, but I also knew if I turned my back, the old man would have nowhere to go. The calls came more frequently. Dad called early. "How much this month? Don't be late," Mom called. Late, her voice trembling, starting with, "Are you okay?" Then immediately, "Have you arranged the money yet?" I always dodged. "Work unstable, economic downturn." "Any excuse?" "I'll send it soon," I'd say, my voice sounding so fake it made me cringe. But the truth was I couldn't. The second month, I sent $1,000. The third, just $800. Each transfer felt like cutting a piece of my own flesh. The pressure built, leaving no room to breathe. At Quickmart, my hands scanned items, my mind drifting, almost miscalculating change. Delivering food, the cold wind slapped my face, as I endlessly pondered a choice with no easy answer. Duty to my parents, who, harsh as they were, had raised me. Or the old man, a stranger, but now part of my daily life. If I chose him, would I be ungrateful? If I abandoned him, how was I any different from those who'd hurried past him on the street? On those long nights, I lay awake listening to his soft snoring. "You have to choose, Santiago," I told myself. My parents weren't wealthy, but they had the farm. They had Kevin, even if he was lazy. But the old man? If I put him back on the street or in a facility, he'd waste away in loneliness. After many nights, tears soaking my pillow, I decided I would keep caring for him. But deep down, I knew it was just an illusion. I needed to go home and explain in person. Maybe looking into my eyes, they'd see my sincerity. I arranged my jobs, took 3 days off, promising to make up the hours. I rented a cheap car and drove to Idaho without telling them. I wanted to surprise them, to see their real reaction. The 8-hour journey was endless: rainy highways, dry fields, old wooden houses. The familiar smell of damp earth. When I pulled up to the farmhouse, patchy roof, overgrown yard, my heart pounded. The door opened. There was Kevin, slouched on the porch, cigarette between his fingers, lazy as ever. 25, unemployed for months, living off my parents. "What are you doing here?" he sneered, no greeting. I walked inside. The smell of toasted bread and coffee. Dad at the table, Mom washing dishes. They looked up, surprised. "Santiago, why the sudden visit?" But the surprise quickly turned to irritation. Dad frowned. Mom, worried, wiped her hands on her apron. No hug, no smile. Instead, Dad immediately asked, "So, where's this month's money? Why haven't you sent it?" I froze, my heart squeezed tight. I'd come home, exhausted, and the first words were about money. "I came to visit," I said, my voice shaking. "But I have something to tell you." Under that pressure, I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. We sat around the kitchen table. The yellow light made the room feel stifling. Kevin leaned back, a mocking smirk on his lips. I took a deep breath, spoke slowly, trying to stay calm. I told them about that cold, rainy day, the old man on the sidewalk. My decision to stop, to call 911, the hospital, bringing him home. Every meal, every night, finding the kitchen light on. "He has Alzheimer's," I said, my voice trembling. "He doesn't remember who he is. Has no one. I couldn't leave him out there freezing." Dad narrowed his eyes, tapping his fingers on the table. I swallowed and continued, looking straight at him. "Living costs have gone up a lot. So, starting next month, I'll have to temporarily stop supporting the family until I stabilize my finances." The kitchen went silent for a few agonizing seconds. Then, Dad slammed his hand on the table. "What did you just say?" he roared. "You're using money to feed a stranger and then come here to cut off your own parents? That money belongs to the family." His voice grew louder. "You're such an idiot. Always meddling in other people's business, wasting your hard work on some nobody while your parents here are scraping by on the little you send." I stiffened. I hadn't even opened my mouth when Mom cut in, her voice high and sharp. "You're really ungrateful. We're old now, can't work anymore. Don't you think about us? We raised you all these years just for you to turn your back now?" Kevin chuckled softly. "You like playing the hero, huh? Saving a homeless old man to feel noble." He looked me up and down. "If you've got so much free time, why not save your own family first?" The words came fast, relentless, like knives cutting into my chest. I opened my mouth, but my throat choked up. Every explanation felt meaningless. This wasn't just an outburst. It was a contempt that had been there all along, just waiting for a chance to surface. In their eyes, all my efforts, my sacrifices, had never been valued. I wasn't a son. I was just a steady source of money. Dad stared at me, his voice ice cold, each word heavy as stone. "If you keep supporting that old man, then as of today, I no longer have a son like you. Choose." No one said another word. I sat there, numb, realizing some boundaries, once crossed, have no way back. I chose silence. No arguing, no explaining. What good were words when their hearts were already closed? I stood up, legs heavy as lead, and left the house quietly. Kevin sneered behind me. Mom sobbed softly. Dad turned away. Outside, rain began to fall, soaking my clothes. I drove back to Portland, carrying a heaviness, a hurt I couldn't share. The road stretched endlessly, and for the first time, I wondered, what is family, if it's not a place to come home to? My hands gripped the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the black highway. Rain hammered the windshield like a relentless drumbeat in my head. At first, my mind was blank. But then, old memories flooded back, pulling me against the current, making my heart ache. From a young age, I'd had to fend for myself. Summers in Idaho, I'd be up at dawn to feed chickens, work the garden. Meanwhile, Kevin, 5 years younger, rode his bike with friends, and no one made him come home on time. "You're the older one. You need to help your parents," Dad would say. I wasn't allowed to ask for anything. No new toys, no snacks. Every time I opened my mouth, Mom would shake her head. "Let your brother have it. He's still little." I always had to yield, put Kevin first. My 10th birthday, I dreamed of a bike. Dad said no money. The next week, Kevin got a new ball because he was feeling down. I swallowed my tears, telling myself I had to be strong, the pillar. But deep down, the unfairness burned like a wound. School was the same. I worked hard for good grades, hoping they'd be proud. But they took it for granted. "Of course you can do that," Dad would say, casual as talking about the weather. No praise. With Kevin, bad grades were met with excuses. "He's still young. Don't push him," Mom would say, stroking his head while I studied alone. Sooner than other kids, I worked odd jobs. At 13, I was already on neighbors' farms, mowing lawns, picking fruit. My back ached. The money? All to Dad, a few dollars for school supplies for me. Kevin was allowed to focus on himself, playing sports, hanging out, shielded like a noble child in a poor household. "Your brother needs time to grow," Mom would say defensively. I didn't envy Kevin. I just wondered why his maturity was something to wait for, while mine was an obligation. Every mistake I made, I became the example. "You're grown and still so clumsy. Look at your brother," Dad would yell. "Kevin's mistakes? Be more careful next time, okay?" Those small differences, day after day, filled a glass silently. I recognized the unfairness early, but I never dared speak up. I was afraid of being called selfish, of cracking the family. When I left Idaho for Portland, my role shrank to almost nothing more than a person who sent money. I remember leaving. Old suitcase, a few clothes. Dad patted my shoulder. "Work hard, send money home." "No good luck, no hug?" Mom cried, then quickly wiped her tears. "Remember to send the money early, son." From then on, my life was work, save, transfer $2,000 every month. Like an unnamed tax. But I knew most of that money wasn't just for their living expenses. More than once, days after I sent it, Kevin would post on social media, "New clothes, the latest phone, check-ins at bars. Weekend stress relief." He'd caption, "While I was breaking my back with 3 jobs." I never asked directly, afraid of tension. But I understood. My parents had grown used to using my money to make up for my brother's mistakes, his laziness, his endless partying. "Your brother's going through a tough time," Mom would often say. "Help him out a little longer, okay?" Years of this. I gradually realized I'd never been seen as a son who needed care, just a financial resource. Christmas, I called home, excited to talk about work. Dad interrupted. "Why haven't I seen this month's money yet?" He never asked what I was eating, how I was sleeping, if I was tired. I was a walking ATM. Nothing more. This incident, when I confessed about the old man, wasn't the first time I'd been dismissed. It was just the straw that broke the camel's back. The first time I no longer had the strength to keep enduring. On the highway, those memories made me tremble. I slowed the car, tears streaming, wiping them with my sleeve. Where did I go wrong? Why was I treated like this? I gasped, heart full of pain. The rain fell harder. Visibility blurred, and I nearly lost control. Pulling over, I sat there, gasping, feeling like my world was collapsing. As I neared Portland, the emptiness and exhaustion grew sharper. The city lights brought no warmth. I was drained, body aching, spirit shattered. When I finally reached my small room, I parked unsteadily, opened the door, physically and emotionally spent. The door creaked, and instead of the usual musty smell, the aroma of food filled the air. Warm canned bean soup. From the kitchen, I saw the old man diligently cooking, his movements slow but careful, eyes focused. On the table were simple dishes, bread, soup, sliced apple. The room was tidier than when I'd left, floors wiped, things neatly arranged. I stood frozen for a moment. After a day of being rejected by my own blood family, the person waiting for me was a stranger, with no shared blood. He looked up, saw me, and gave a vague smile. "You're back. Eat while it's hot. It won't taste good cold." His voice was soft, but full of warmth. The kind of warmth I'd never received from my parents. In that moment, I felt this small house, cramped and lacking as it was, gave me a sense of peace greater than anywhere else. Tears rolled down, but this time they were tears of relief. I sat down at the table, ate in silence, and for the first time, I thought maybe family isn't about blood. It's about the people who choose to stay by your side. After that stressful trip home, I returned to the grind of work, but nothing felt the same. My parents' harsh words haunted me, like deep knife cuts. I tried to forget, throwing myself into work, but the financial pressure and emotional wounds slowly wore down my health. First, it was just fatigue. Then, dizziness during deliveries. At night, I had to prop my chin to stay awake. The cost of his medications and food forced me to cut back on everything for myself. My wallet grew thinner, a rock pressing on my chest. I told myself to be strong, but my body didn't listen. The pressures piled up, worry about the old man, money troubles, the pain from my own family. I started coughing, lightly at first, then persistently, with fits that made my chest ache. Then, a high fever struck. One morning, I woke up burning hot, head heavy, coughing nonstop. I tried to sit up, but my legs were jelly. "Sir, I'm not feeling well," I whispered. The old man came in, moving slowly, but his eyes were filled with worry. "Just lie still," he said, his voice rough but gentle. The days that followed were hell. I was bedridden, fever spiking to 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Endless coughing. I couldn't even get up for work, had to call in sick, my heart aching over the lost pay. My Quickmart boss grumbled, "One more time off, and you're fired." But I couldn't help it. My body had betrayed me. During those days, the old man cared for me in his slow but remarkably attentive way. He wasn't quick or agile, and his memory still came and went, but his concern was like a cool stream, soothing the pain. Luckily, I'd stocked up on food. He made simple soups, stewed vegetables, seasoned just right. "Try to eat so you'll get better," he'd say, bringing the bowl to my bedside, spoon-feeding me. I'd sip each mouthful, warmth spreading. He'd sit on the edge of the bed, watching me closely. "Have you taken your medicine?" he'd ask, then pause, frown, and say, "Let me check again." He'd shuffle to the old alarm clock, reset it, then go to the cabinet, open it, close it, open it again. "Have you taken it yet?" he'd mutter. "Better check to be sure." Sometimes he'd forget I'd just taken it, and reheat more soup. He'd stand in the middle of the room, looking around, then bend to straighten an already neat blanket, wipe every corner, refill my water glass, slowly but carefully. He repeated tasks as if stopping might make him forget he was caring for someone. Watching him fuss like that, I suddenly understood. He didn't remember who he was, but he still remembered how to care for others. Not through memory, but through habits etched deep into his body. I lay there, throat tight with emotion. I whispered, "Thank you." He turned, looked at me, eyes kind but vague. He smiled and nodded. "Just rest. I'll take a break too." He didn't say who I was, but he stayed. Lying ill, in a feverish delirium, I texted my parents, hands shaking. "I'm really sick. Fever, bad cough. Struggling a lot." I sent it, hoping for a call, encouragement, a visit. Nothing. The message just sat there, unread or ignored. The first day, I checked my phone constantly, heart racing. Nothing. The second day, still silence. As the days dragged on, in that hopeless wait, I realized my serious illness wasn't enough to make them care. Maybe they were still angry. Or simply, when the money stopped, I no longer mattered. That indifference cut like a knife, deeper than the physical pain. I lay there, staring at the moldy ceiling, heart full of emptiness and sadness. The contrast between the old man's devoted care, a stranger, and my parents' coldness, it hurt terribly. The person by my side when I was at my weakest wasn't my blood family. Why do they treat me like this? I asked myself, tears soaking the pillow. After more than a week, I recovered enough to return to work. My body was still weak, but slowly readjusting. The old man hadn't changed much. His health was stable. He went about his routine, cooking simple meals, tidying the room. Sometimes mumbling fragmented stories about a past he himself no longer grasped. His memory didn't improve. But he lived peacefully, beside me. To feel more at ease when I left for work, I stuck reminder notes around the room. Turn off stove, lock door, drink water. I wrote down my address and number, folded it neatly, and put it in his pocket, just in case. These little things didn't help his memory, but they eased my worry. Before I knew it, almost 2 years had passed since I brought him home. In those 2 years, that small room had become a true home. I still worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, But with him there, everything felt more bearable. We had routines. Mornings I went to work. He stayed home. Evenings, we ate together, chatted about nothing. He'd talk about scattered memories, a green garden, a big house, but nothing clear. I listened, curious, never pushing. During that time, my parents gradually reduced contact. The rare check-in calls stopped. Messages grew fewer, then almost completely silent. That year's birthday, no greetings. Christmas, no call. It was as if once the regular money stopped, my presence in the family no longer mattered. I checked my phone. The last message from Mom was 3 months ago. Have you sent money to your parents yet? It stung, but I grew numb. I stopped calling, stopped texting. Maybe this was my way to freedom. But loneliness still crept in, especially late at night. Then one day, everything changed. It was a rare Sunday afternoon off. I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone. The old man was napping in the living room, his light snoring echoing softly. I scrolled past articles, then stopped at a missing person notice on a local website. Headline: Family searching for Arthur Caldwell, missing for 8 years. I skimmed it. Age around 70. Memory impairment. Missing for that long. My heart beat faster. Approximately 5 feet 9 inches, silver hair, blue eyes, suffers from Alzheimer's, wandered off. I sat up, hands shaking, as I scrolled to the photo. An old picture, a man in a neat suit, smiling confidently. Younger, but the face was eerily familiar. Square jaw, deep-set eyes, that vague smile. It was the old man living with me. I was stunned. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. I zoomed in to be sure. Though younger in the photo, hair darker, the features were identical. The small scar on his right cheek, the wrinkles around his eyes. The missing person's name was Arthur Caldwell, head of a major financial dynasty. The article said the family had been searching for him for 8 years, offering a large reward for information. I read it over and over, heart pounding like a drum. The thought that this simple man, who cooked soup for me, might be a powerful figure left me confused and cautious. A billionaire, owner of a financial empire. How had he ended up homeless in Portland? I glanced toward the living room, where he slept peacefully, unaware. If this was true, both our lives would change in ways we couldn't avoid. Would I lose him, or would my life be turned upside down? My mind was in turmoil. Excitement mixed with fear. I realized that if what I just read was true, our quiet, simple existence would end. That fragile piece had begun to crack. I sat there, phone clutched tightly, the screen glowing with Arthur Caldwell's photo. My heart pounded, cold sweat breaking out. The old man, Arthur, was still napping, his soft snoring a stark contrast to the storm raging in my mind. I turned off the screen, stood, and paced, trying to calm myself. The face was identical, even if the photo was old, more confident, elegant. My old man wore faded t-shirts and worn jeans. But if he was Arthur Caldwell, head of an empire, then what? What would I do? Inform his family, or stay silent and let this life continue? The thought panicked me. I didn't rush to contact anyone. No, I needed time to cross-check everything to be certain. In the days that followed, I spent every free moment digging deeper. At Quickmart, my mind wandered, just waiting for my shift to end. Delivering food, I pedaled faster, restless inside. At night, on security duty, I used my phone to search for more information about Arthur Caldwell. Google, Wikipedia, business profiles. The results stunned me. Arthur Caldwell was indeed the head of Caldwell Investments, billions in assets, branches across the US and Europe. A legend. His disappearance in 2017 after a business trip to the Pacific Northwest had made headlines. No leads. Articles described him as having early-stage Alzheimer's before he went missing. Every detail matched age, height, identifying features, even the scar. I read it over and over, heart racing, feeling like I was in a Hollywood movie. He's real, I whispered. My mind was in turmoil. But I still hesitated. If I contacted them, would he leave? Would I be alone again? I decided to talk to him first. One evening, after a simple dinner, we sat at the table. I took a deep breath. Sir, do you know anyone named Arthur Caldwell? He looked up, his clouded eyes blinking. He shook his head. The name Arthur sounds familiar, but I don't remember. I swallowed hard. Do you remember anything about your family? A big house? Someone named Emily? He was silent for a moment, fingers tracing the table edge. I remember a garden, and children laughing, he mumbled. But it's not clear. Who am I? Do I have grandchildren? His voice sounded so lost, making my heart ache. In the end, he still didn't remember. I forced a smile and changed the subject. It's okay, sir. Just asking. But my heart felt heavy. He didn't remember, but his family did. I couldn't keep him forever, no matter how much I wanted to. After many sleepless nights, listening to his soft snoring, I made the decision, my heart pounding. I contacted the number listed in the missing person notice. It rang for a long time. Then a young woman's voice, professional but weary, answered. Emily Caldwell speaking. I took a deep breath. Hello, this is Santiago Wright from Portland. I saw the notice about Arthur Caldwell, and I think he's with me. Silence on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath. Are you serious? Or are you trying to scam us for the reward money? I told her everything, the rainy day, rescuing him, the hospital, caring for him for 2 years. I described his appearance, his Alzheimer's. Hearing what I provided, Emily sounded both shocked and emotional. Oh my God, my grandfather has been missing for 8 years. What you're describing, his health, memory, circumstances, it matches perfectly. Do you have photos? Send them to me. I sent pictures of him sleeping. Emily cried. It's him. It's definitely him. The descriptions convinced her. She wanted to come pick him up immediately. I'll fly to Portland right away. Give me the address. But I refused to just hand him over. He couldn't make decisions. His memory was lost. I'd never met Emily. I feared a scam. I'm sorry, but I can't just hand him over like that, I said firmly. He trusts me. I'll bring him to you myself. We'll meet in person. After a moment, Emily sighed. I understand. You're right to be cautious. I'll send you the family home address in California. Please help bring him back. We'll be waiting. I immediately arranged my work, heart full of worry and excitement. Extended leave, despite my boss's grumbling. I rented a cheap car. The bus would be too tiring for him. The next morning, I gently woke him. Sir, today I'm taking you on a long trip. He nodded vaguely, asking no questions. We left Portland in light rain, him staring out the window with vacant eyes. The 10-hour journey took us through Oregon's green forests to California's hills. My mind raced. Would he remember home? Was Emily real? At every rest stop, I checked on him, fearing he'd panic. When we arrived late in the afternoon, I saw it, a large, discreet villa, carefully secured. High iron gates, cameras, lush gardens. My heart pounded. As soon as we entered the grounds, the old man had a strange, instinctive reaction. He slowed his steps, looking around longer, a flicker of familiarity in his eyes. This place? I think I know it, he mumbled, holding my arm tighter. Emily Caldwell came out to greet us. A young woman, mid-20s, long brown hair, dressed simply but exuding elegance. Her initial demeanor was reserved as she saw me, a strange man bringing her grandfather home. Are you Santiago? She asked coolly. I briefly explained his circumstances, why I brought him in person. He trusts me. Emily listened, her eyes gradually softening. Face to face, she quickly recognized him, even with his lost memory. Grandpa. She called him affectionately, tears streaming, gently hugging him. The old man didn't call her Emily, but he responded familiarly, stroking her hair, seeming more at ease near her. To reassure me, Emily had the family lawyer and a private doctor verify everything. Old photos, identifying marks, medical info, a quick DNA test. 100% match, the lawyer said. I exhaled in relief, but my heart felt heavy. As I prepared to leave, the old man grew confused and anxious, clinging to me, gripping my hand. He mumbled for me not to go, eyes panicked. Seeing that, Emily realized that even back in his home, Arthur still saw me as his safest anchor. Stay a while. Give us a chance to thank you, she said, her voice emotional. Our first interaction was cautious. Emily saw I had no ulterior motives, no demand for the reward. And I saw she genuinely cared about his well-being. We talked briefly, exchanged numbers, and I left feeling a mix of anticipation and unease. Life had changed, and I knew this was only the beginning. As I prepared to leave, a middle-aged man entered, moving hurriedly, trying to maintain an air of authority. He was around 50, short salt and pepper hair, smart gray suit, but his eyes were sharp as knives. Emily introduced him, her voice tense. This is Richard Caldwell, my grandfather's eldest son. He's been running the family empire all these years. Richard stopped, looking at Arthur, his father, with an expression I'll never forget. For a second, he froze, panic flashing across his face, almost too raw to hide. His eyes widened, lips pressed tight, as if seeing a ghost. My heart beat faster. Something was wrong here. Not the joyful reunion I'd expected. After a few seconds, Richard regained his composure, forced a stiff smile, but his gaze shifted to me with obvious weariness, as if I were an intruder. He called his father's name loudly, artificially warm, and hugged Arthur awkwardly. Arthur just nodded vaguely. Then Richard turned to me, his tone icy. Who are you? Why would an outsider bring my father back without going through the family? I swallowed hard, explaining briefly. I'm Santiago Wright, the one who's been caring for him for 2 years. I found him on the street. Emily contacted me. Richard frowned, scrutinizing me. When he learned Emily had been the one to contact me, his attitude changed completely. He turned to Emily, voice sharp. Emily, what have you done? Why did you handle something this important on your own? Without informing me or the family, you've let everything spiral out of control. The atmosphere grew tense, like a string about to snap. Emily tried to stay calm, face flushed, but voice firm. I only prioritized Grandpa's safety. Santiago saved him and cared for him. I didn't want any risks. Richard shook his head. You acted emotionally, letting an outsider interfere in internal family matters. Do you realize how big this is? I stood there, filled with unease. Richard's reaction wasn't about the care Arthur had received, his illness, his loneliness. It was solely about why this return hadn't been under his control. As if Arthur were an unexpected chess piece that had appeared and disrupted his board. I quickly said goodbye and left that grand house, carrying a heavy sense of foreboding. Arthur's family was far from the harmonious picture their wealth suggested. Beneath the luxurious villa lay hidden schemes. I drove back to Portland, mind reeling, wondering if he was truly safe there. In the days that followed, I couldn't sit still. Rationally, I no longer had responsibility. But Arthur had become part of my life. The man who cared for me when I was sick, who waited for me for dinner, who brought warmth to my cold room. I frequently texted Emily, asking about Arthur's condition. How is he? Is he okay? I'd ask, voice worried. At first, Emily replied cautiously, giving basic info. Grandpa is fine, resting. Thank you. Her tone was polite but distant. I didn't push. Just sent regular messages, hoping he wasn't lonely. But over time, I noticed troubling signs. Emily's responses grew guarded, hesitant. Messages became shorter, calls fewer. Grandpa is adjusting, but things are a bit complicated. My heart raced. Something was happening. I didn't press. I only cared if Arthur was stable and safe. As long as he's healthy, I'm happy. I texted calmly. My lack of ulterior motives and my patience slowly changed Emily's view of me. After a few weeks, she started opening up. One late-night call, Emily's voice weary. Santiago, you're the only one who was there for Grandpa when he was at his weakest, not for money or status. I exhaled, feeling an unfamiliar warmth. After a few such conversations, Emily trusted me. She became more open, sharing what was really happening. Her voice trembled over the phone. Since Grandpa returned, Richard has been controlling his daily life very tightly. He's restricted from going out, always monitored. Personal decisions, what to eat, who to see, have to go through others, under the pretext of protecting his health. I listened, my heart tightening. Emily gradually revealed more. Old documents related to assets and management authority were being brought up, sparking disputes. Richard signed many contracts during the 8 years Grandpa was missing, she said. Now that Grandpa's back, those decisions could be reviewed. Arthur's return meant Richard faced losing control over the company and decisions made in his absence. Arthur's presence was a direct threat to Richard's interests, and those of his wife, Margaret, and son, Lucas, who had benefited from that power. Emily shared more details. He's hired private doctors to monitor Grandpa 24/7, but I suspect it's not just care. There are closed-door meetings, and I'm being kept out. I gradually understood. Arthur's return wasn't just a family reunion. It was an event that could upend the entire balance of power. The Caldwell dynasty, with its vast financial empire, was now like a chessboard, and Arthur was the king, unexpectedly revived. I realized Arthur might not be safe, even in his own home. Now that he's home, is he happy? I asked Emily, concerned. She sighed. Grandpa often asks about you, calls you the kind grandson. But Richard doesn't like it. Says Grandpa needs rest and shouldn't see outsiders. That unease made it impossible for me to step away. My 3 jobs in Portland, my cramped room, now felt emptier than ever. But my thoughts were always in California. Late at night, I lay awake, thinking about him. The man who made soup for me when I was sick. Now isolated in that luxurious villa. I began seriously considering whether I could stand by while the person who had sheltered me at my weakest was caught in a silent, dangerous conflict. What should I do? I asked myself, heart pounding. Anticipation surged every time Emily texted, fearing bad news. The reunion wasn't the rosy picture I'd imagined. It was full of shadows, and I knew I was about to be drawn in. Those days, I lived in a state of limbo, walking a tightrope. At Quickmart, my hands trembled. Delivering food, the cold wind slapped my face as I pedaled, heart full of worry. Was he lonely? Was Richard doing something to him? At night, on security duty, I checked my phone constantly, hoping for a message from Emily. My room was emptier than ever. No more mumbling. No more warm smell of soup. I cooked alone, ate quickly, then lay awake, imagining the schemes within the Caldwell family. I knew I didn't belong in their world, villas, lawyers, power. But Arthur had become part of me, and I couldn't abandon him. A few days later, Emily reached out. It was late evening, just after I got home from the night shift, body exhausted. The phone rang. Emily's voice was urgent, panicked. Santiago, I know this doesn't directly involve you, but I want to talk to you. My heart raced, a bad premonition rising. Emily said Arthur's longtime caregiver, a trusted nurse, had been suddenly replaced without clear reason, swapped for someone chosen by Richard. I'm very suspicious, she whispered. My visits with Grandpa keep getting postponed. I only get short, supervised meetings. I slumped onto the bed, gripping the phone, picturing Arthur, the man who had diligently made soup for me, now isolated in his own home. According to Emily, Arthur had become more withdrawn, with limited contact, often in a state of prolonged fatigue. Grandpa sleeps a lot, forgets more than before, she said, voice full of worry. I think it's due to medication interference, but Uncle Richard says it's just old age. Emily admitted she was being sidelined from decisions. I'm excluded from meetings. He says I'm too young, too emotional. He's controlling everything. I listened, anger boiling. Tension rose as Emily revealed more. She had discovered Richard was arranging for Arthur to sign a full power of attorney, transferring legal and financial control to him, claiming Arthur was no longer capable. The documents are already prepared, Emily whispered, voice panicked. If Grandpa signs, Richard will have everything, the company, the assets, all of it. I'm afraid he's being pressured. I gritted my teeth, imagining Arthur, with his lost memory, being backed into a corner. What should I do now? I want your advice, Emily asked, desperate. I comforted her. Keep watching closely. I'm here ready to help. But inside, I was uneasy, sensing a storm approaching. In the nights that followed, I lay awake, mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Arthur, isolated, forced to sign, stripped of all autonomy. I wasn't a lawyer, wasn't wealthy, but I knew I had to protect him, the man who had given me warmth when my own blood family turned away. One afternoon, everything exploded. I was out delivering in Portland, sweating under a weak sun, when my phone rang insistently. It was Emily, voice panicked, almost crying. Santiago, I found out. They're preparing to sign the papers this very afternoon. The power of attorney is ready, time for when Grandpa is at his weakest and most dependent. I tried to intervene, but I was blocked. They say it's an internal family decision. My heart stopped. My hand shook so much I nearly dropped the food bag. They're forcing him to sign, Emily pleaded, her voice breaking. Come right away. If we're too late, Grandpa won't be protected anymore. I need you now. With no other choice, I abandoned my shift, called in an emergency leave, and rushed to my car. Heart pounding like a war drum, I drove to the Caldwell Villa in California, knowing this was a moment for no hesitation. The 8-hour journey felt endless. But I drove like mad, stopping only for gas, my mind reeling with images of Arthur being coerced. When I appeared at the villa gate, ringing urgently, the atmosphere inside immediately tensed. Emily came out, face pale, pulling me into the grand living room where everyone was gathered around a polished wooden table, papers spread out. Richard confronted me directly, face flushed with anger. Who are you? How dare you barge in here? Leave immediately. You have no right to interfere. His voice echoed with authority, but I stood firm, heart racing, but resolute. I'm Santiago Wright, the one who saved and cared for Arthur for 2 years. I'm here because Emily called, and for him. Richard's wife, Margaret Caldwell, a middle-aged woman with heavy makeup and designer clothes, spoke up, her voice shrill. An outsider like you? Coming back here surely means you have impure motives. Get out. Their son, Lucas Caldwell, a young man, arrogant posture, slicked back hair, showed contempt. A lowlife like you should leave before we call security. I clenched my teeth, anger surging, but didn't retort, only looking toward Arthur, sitting there, face weary, hand holding a pen shakily. Emily stepped forward, positioning herself between Arthur and the signing table, her hands slightly trembling, but her voice firm. Everyone stop! Grandpa is not willingly signing anything here. He's been isolated, his daily life controlled, even his medication. What you're calling protection is actually coercion. She turned to each person, continuing without hesitation. I have plenty of evidence. Medical records withheld. My requests to visit unreasonably delayed, and the sudden caregiver change right before today's signing. The room heated up instantly, overlapping protests erupted. But at that moment, I stepped closer. Arthur looked up, his gaze lingering on me longer than usual. His hand slowly released the pen, fingers trembling. "You're the good one," he mumbled, his voice weak but clear. He shook his head, pushing the pen away as if it scared him. "I don't want to sign," he said, eyes full of confusion. "I don't understand this. Don't force me to sign." That shift made the room explode. Richard stepped forward, voice harsh. "He's no longer lucid enough to know what he's saying. Everyone can see that clearly." Margaret immediately chimed in, voice cold and sharp. "This is internal Caldwell family business. Outsiders have no right to interfere or disrupt." Lucas crossed his arms, sneering at me. "It's obvious. This guy has been psychologically influencing him all along. Stop pretending innocence." Arthur shrank back in his chair, a trembling hand clutching mine like an anchor. Emily immediately advanced, standing fully in front of him, her voice now more resolute than ever. "No one has the right to continue this procedure," she said loudly. "My grandfather is not consenting, and his reaction clearly shows he's confused and scared." She looked straight at Richard, unflinching. "In this state, any signature would be invalid." Then Emily continued, each word falling heavily in the vast room. "What's happening here is elder abuse, and I won't let it continue." The room fell into a tense silence. No one dared push that pen forward again. In the presence of those there, the family lawyer, nurses, and us, Arthur chose to leave with Emily and me. He held my hand tighter, walking slowly but determinedly, despite fierce protests from Richard's side. "Stop. This is betrayal," Richard roared, face purple with rage. Margaret wailed dramatically. "Emily, you're destroying the family." Lucas cursed. "Traitors." We escorted Arthur out of the villa, rushing to the car in pouring rain, my heart pounding. Afterward, Emily quickly arranged for Arthur to move to a different home, a smaller, more discreet, and independent villa in the suburbs, away from Richard's control. We arrived there late that night. Arthur was tired, but more at ease with me beside him. "Thank you for coming to help me and Grandpa," Emily whispered. I realized that from this moment, I wasn't just protecting one person. I had stepped fully into a power struggle of a family I had never belonged to. Sitting in the new house, watching Emily arrange things, I felt full of anticipation and fear. Richard wouldn't stop. This was only the beginning of the storm. But seeing Arthur sleep peacefully, I knew I had chosen right. This fight wasn't for me. It was for him, the man who had taught me true kindness. After the chaotic incident at the Caldwell villa, I decided to stay at the new house with Arthur. It was smaller, more discreet, with lush gardens, isolated from the noisy world. Emily had rented it privately to avoid Richard's prying eyes. I arranged my affairs in Portland, requesting extended leave, accepting the risk of losing my jobs if necessary, and moved there temporarily. "Please stay and help care for Grandpa," Emily said gratefully. I nodded, heart full of worry but resolute. I continued caring for him, maintaining familiar routines to help him stabilize mentally. Early mornings, I'd make hot tea and spoon-feed him simple beef stew soup, just like in Portland. He was still weak, his memory lost, but accustomed to my presence. "My good grandson," he'd mumble, holding my hand as we sat by the window overlooking the garden. Those moments warmed my heart, but also reminded me that he was in the midst of a storm. I cleaned, helped him bathe, told random stories about rainy days in Portland to prevent him from panicking. He'd smile vaguely, a familiar spark in his eyes, and I knew I was doing the right thing, keeping him from isolation. Emily visited often, driving from the city with fresh fruit and supplements. She monitored his health, consulting a private nurse, and talked to me about what was happening in the family. We'd sit in the small kitchen, whispering over black coffee. "Richard is holding closed-door meetings with lawyers," Emily said, face pale. "They won't let this go." We both understood Richard wouldn't accept defeat easily. Emily admitted she had quietly collected documents over the years about Richard's misconduct during his time running the company. Her voice trembled. "I've suspected it for a long time, but didn't dare act." The documents included shady financial decisions, transferring millions to offshore accounts, shifting benefits to shell companies managed by Margaret and Lucas, and signing documents on Arthur's behalf beyond his authority. Richard signed contracts selling shares without real authorization, Emily whispered, showing me photos on her phone. My heart raced, tension rising as I grasped the scale. This wasn't a small family dispute. It was billions in fraud. Previously, Emily had chosen silence to avoid tearing the family apart. "I thought I could persuade him," she said, her eyes red. "But not anymore." After witnessing Arthur's isolation and near loss of autonomy, Emily realized her silence only put him in further danger. I can't let it continue, she said firmly. Emily decided to submit all the evidence to authorities, seeing it as the only way to protect Arthur and end Richard's control. I supported her as she prepared the files, photocopying documents, writing detailed reports. Will they believe it? I asked, hands shaking. Emily nodded. Yes, because it's the truth. We sent the files to the FBI and SEC, through a private lawyer, waiting anxiously. Each day felt like a year. I checked messages constantly, fearing Richard would discover it. The authorities moved faster than we expected. Weeks later, agents visited, interviewing Emily and me, reviewing Arthur's medical records. They scrutinized thousands of pages of transactions, emails, contracts. I watched Emily work tirelessly, providing more evidence. Would the evidence hold? Would Richard buy his way out? The media quickly picked up the story, turning the Caldwell family's internal affair into a public spectacle. Headlines blared. Missing billionaire returns, exposing internal fraud. News channels interviewed experts. Caldwell investment stock plummeted, pressure mounting on Richard. Under public pressure, Richard, Margaret, and Lucas held a press conference, denying everything, claiming slander. I watched live on my laptop, anger surging. This is a plot by jealous people, Richard said. My father has Alzheimer's. He's not lucid. Margaret sobbed. We were only protecting him. Lucas added. Emily is power-hungry. Meanwhile, Richard's side spread smears, portraying Emily as a power grabber, and implying I was exploiting Arthur. Tabloids ran stories. Mystery man from Portland, opportunist or hero? They dug into my past, my 3 grueling jobs, poor family in Idaho, insinuating I was after a reward. I read it with trembling hands, my heart aching. They're lying shamelessly. Emily texted, furious. I chose silence, staying with Arthur, letting the evidence speak. I didn't respond to the press, just cared for him, fed him, told him stories, shielding him from the chaos. But tension rose daily, fearing Richard's retaliation. The investigation dragged on for months. Agents came frequently. Emily and I cooperated fully, but our hearts were full of fear. Would the evidence hold? The trial opened in federal court in San Francisco. I sat in the back rows, hands clenched, watching Arthur, brought in with a nurse, sit there vaguely. Each misconduct, financial management, abuse of power, concealment, was brought to light. The prosecutor presented forged contracts, transfers to shell companies, signatures made on Arthur's behalf. Evidence piled up. Richard sat there, face ashen, his lawyers defending weakly. This is a misunderstanding. Many transactions were declared void. The courtroom was electric. Reporters scribbled furiously. I sat there, heart pounding, awaiting the verdict. The court ruled. Richard Caldwell, 14 years in federal prison for financial fraud, abuse of power, and elder coercion. Margaret Caldwell, 6 years as an accomplice. Lucas Caldwell, 3 years probation, ordered to repay all illicit gains. The gavel banged. Richard slumped. Margaret cried. Lucas turned bloodless. I exhaled deeply, tears streaming, not from joy, but relief. After the verdict, Emily and I, with lawyers, brought Arthur back to his original home. The grand villa was now peaceful, free of Richard's presence. Control of the empire was restored to Arthur's original intent. Emily took temporary charge, supported by the board. I realized this fight hadn't brought victory to anyone individually. It simply restored Arthur's right to live and decide his own life. I watched him sit in the garden, smiling vaguely, and thought it was all worth it. The Caldwell dynasty entered a new era, free of hidden schemes, while I prepared to close my role as an outsider, ready for the final chapter of my own life. But my heart still raced. Would the peace last? After everything stabilized, Richard and his family imprisoned, invalid contracts voided, the company restructured under Emily's oversight, life returned to a more normal rhythm. Arthur stayed in the main villa, his health stable, though his memory remained lost. Emily took temporary leadership and frequently called me with updates. Grandpa often asks about you, she said, her voice warm. I remained in the small house, caring for him on weekends. But gradually, I felt I should return to Portland, to my simple life, away from the power struggles that had exhausted me. I didn't belong in that world of board meetings, lawyers, vast sums of money. I was just Santiago Wright, the guy who once worked 3 jobs to get by. One afternoon, as we sat with Arthur in the garden, him gazing at the flowers with a vague smile, Emily looked at me seriously. Santiago, I want to offer you a job at the family company. Not out of obligation, but because you have the ability. I've seen how hardworking and reliable you are. I froze, heart racing. Work for Caldwell Investments, in high-rise offices, meetings with investors? I shook my head immediately. Thank you, but no. I just want to go back to a peaceful life in Portland. These power struggles, I'm tired of them. Emily didn't push, but her eyes were persistent. Think about it. Grandpa needs you close, and so do I. Those words haunted me. I lay awake, weighing it. Returning to Portland meant loneliness again. The cold rented room, the grueling 3 jobs. With Emily's persistence, and Arthur's desire for me nearby, he often held my hand, mumbling, "Good grandson." I agreed to give it a try, seeing it as a chance to start over. "All right, I'll try not to let you down," I said, voice trembling, heart full of anticipation. Could I really do it? I had to learn everything from scratch: complex operations, tracking investments, market analysis, managing people. Under Emily's patient guidance, she spent after hours explaining things, bringing documents home, and with the diligence honed from my hard years in Portland, I gradually adapted. I stayed up late studying, worked extra hours, and proved myself through small tasks, analyzing reports, supporting the team. Colleagues initially eyed me suspiciously, a guy from Portland with no prestigious degree, but over time, they respected my work ethic, willingness to take responsibility, and refusal to shy from challenges. Once, during a project crisis, a data error, I stayed late, fixed it, and saved the situation. A manager clapped my shoulder. "You handled that quickly and effectively. Well done." Over time, I secured a solid position, trusted with important tasks, overseeing investments, even attending board meetings. My heart raced each time I entered, but I grew accustomed to it, feeling like I was building a new life. In the time working together, feelings between Emily and me developed naturally. It started with after-work conversations about the job, about Arthur, about everything we'd been through. We cared for Arthur together, taking him for walks, telling stories, helping him eat. He sat there, listening to us, always present, holding his hand, smiling gently. Arthur witnessed our growing bond with quiet contentment, sensing his life was truly protected. But then, the past knocked again. One day, at the office, security called from the lobby. "2 elderly people are here looking for you. They say they're your parents." My heart tightened, a bad feeling rising. I went down and saw them, Dylan and Scarlett, my parents, looking worn out, clothes old and dusty from travel. Their familiar yet distant eyes stunned me for a moment. Dad was thinner, hair completely white. Mom gaunt, clutching a worn handbag. "Santiago!" Dad called my name. They had tracked me down, surely through media coverage of the Caldwell case. We went to a private office, the atmosphere tense. They said Kevin had squandered everything, gambling, partying, massive debts, leaving them destitute. "The house is about to be foreclosed," Mom cried, her voice shaking. "Your brother disappeared, abandoning us with all the debt." They begged, hoping I'd once again shoulder everything. "You're the eldest son. It's your responsibility," Dad said forcefully, as if my years of sacrifices had never existed. "Send money home. Save us." I stood silently, listening, my heart pounding. This wasn't fear, it was a decisive moment. For the first time, I realized that in their story, I was still just a rescue option. Nothing more. No questions about my well-being, no apologies for the past, just demands. But this time, instead of pain or resentment, I felt a cold, clear clarity. All the emotions that once made me tremble seemed drained. I looked at them, no longer the son always trying to please his parents. I spoke slowly, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. "Mom, Dad, I won't continue sacrificing my life to cover others' wrong choices." I said it clearly, without evasion. I wouldn't send more money. I wouldn't take on consequences I hadn't created. A relationship based only on demands, blame, and exploitation was no longer family. I continued. "I've done enough. Now I choose to live for my own life." Dylan erupted immediately. He slammed his hand on the table, roaring. "You're ungrateful. You've forgotten all we did to raise you. I disown you." Scarlett burst into tears. "Son, don't abandon us. You're all we have left." They went on, blaming each other, circumstances, Kevin, even me. But this time, I didn't explain. Didn't justify. Didn't apologize. I'd done that my whole life. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "Please leave," I said, my voice steady, without anger or trembling. They stared at me, stunned by a decisiveness I'd never shown before. Then they left. No hug, no real plea. Just heavy silence. As the door closed, I stood still for a moment. No pain, no resentment, just a gradual lightness spreading in my chest, as if a rope that had bound me for years was finally untied. In that moment, I understood I had truly severed the past that had imprisoned me. My heart still raced, but it was no longer the beat of fear. It was the thrill of freedom. 2 years after those tumultuous events, my life had changed in ways I never could have imagined. From an exhausted man scraping by in Portland, I now stood as the Chief Operating Officer, COO, of Caldwell Investments. Not because of my relationship with Emily or any debt of gratitude to Arthur, but because of the competence and reliability I had built. I clearly remember the day Emily called me into her private office. Her voice serious, yet full of pride. "Santiago, the board has decided to promote you to COO. Not because of me, but because of what you've done. Saving that major project last month. Restructuring the team. The way you lead people." My heart pounded, anticipation surging, like the first time I stepped into the glass-walled office. For 2 years I had worked relentlessly, from sleepless nights analyzing reports to tense meetings with partners, where I had to prove I wasn't an outsider. At first, colleagues still looked at me with skeptical eyes. No prestigious MBA, no Ivy League background. But I didn't give up. I arrived earliest, left latest, took on every difficult task. Once, when the company faced a financial crisis, stocks plummeting, I led the team through 48 straight hours of work, proposing a recovery strategy. The result? Stocks rebounded, and people started calling me the quiet hero. The promotion wasn't a surprise. It was the fruit of sweat and discipline. But when I accepted the role, I still felt nervous. Was I worthy? Would my poor past hold me back? Emily and I decided to get married after a long journey of facing hardships together. Not with fanfare or extravagance, but as a natural choice for two people who truly understood and trusted each other. Our feelings grew gradually through simple moments, evenings sitting with Arthur, sharing stories, walks along the beach, hand in hand. Times when Emily was exhausted, and I'd have hot tea waiting for her. Arthur witnessed our growing bond with quiet contentment, sensing his life was truly protected. The wedding was simple, held at the villa with only a few close people. Arthur in the front row, smiling vaguely. A handful of trusted colleagues. No paparazzi, no lavish party. We exchanged plain silver rings and short vows. I promise to stand with you, in caring for those we love, in their strength and in their weakness. After the wedding, we moved into Arthur's main villa, the place that had once witnessed so many disputes, closed-door meetings, shouting matches. Now, it was truly a home. The grand living room became cozy with family photos. The lush garden was where we strolled every morning. I felt nervous stepping into that house for the first time as a husband. Could I do it well? But seeing Emily smile and Arthur at peace, I knew this was home. Emily and I cared for Arthur together every day, maintaining his familiar routine so he could spend his remaining years in tranquility. We woke early, made the vegetable soup he liked, took him for garden walks, and told casual stories about his vague past. He still forgot a lot, but he recognized us, and those moments were full of warmth. Emily was busy with the company, but always made time for her grandfather. "Grandpa, shall I tell you a fairy tale today?" I helped bathe him, gave him medicine, and my heart raced with joy, seeing him healthier, smiling more. Those days were peaceful, though not without small dramas. Once, he wandered off in the garden, and my heart tightened as I searched for him in the rain, filled with fear. But I found him sitting calmly by the koi pond, and we hugged and laughed. Then, Emily gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl, whom we named Clara, meaning bright and peaceful. The pregnancy was full of anticipation. Nights when Emily had morning sickness, and I stayed up rubbing her back. Ultrasound appointments where my heart raced hearing the baby's heartbeat. On the day of birth, I was by her side in the hospital, gripping her hand tightly, as nervous as when confronting Richard. Clara arrived crying loudly, pink-skinned, with big brown eyes like Emily's. We held our daughter, tears streaming. "Our beloved girl, welcome to our world," Emily whispered. There were touching scenes of Arthur on the swing, Clara on his lap, him mumbling a lullaby, vaguely stroking her hair. Those moments were deeply moving. He, with his lost memories, found joy in his great-grandchild. I watched them, heart warm but nervous, thinking about the future. Would Clara grow up in peace? One quiet afternoon, I stood silently watching Arthur play with Clara in the garden. Suddenly recalling the path I had traveled, from a man worn out by burdens to having a true family. Golden afternoon sunlight filtered through the leaves. Clara giggled as Arthur chased her. I stood by the window, my heart racing with emotion. Memories flooded back. The rainy day I saved him. The decision to bring him home. The tense legal battle. And now, a home filled with laughter. I realized that kindness isn't always rewarded immediately, but it always leads to relationships truly worth having. If I hadn't stopped that rainy day, I'd still be alone in Portland. I understood that family isn't a place that binds people with obligation or blood. Family is where we choose to stay, where we are respected and protected at our most vulnerable. Some share blood but turn away. Others, strangers, become our anchors in the darkest days. What matters isn't where we were born, but who is willing to hold our hand when everything gets hard. My story ends with a simple lesson I paid dearly to learn: live kindly, but don't lose yourself. Be willing to help others, but also know how to protect your own values and boundaries. Only then does kindness not become a burden, and life truly belongs to us. What do you think? Have you ever had to choose between what your blood family expected of you and what your heart told you was right? I'd really love to hear your experiences in the comments below.